From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. We've got a good show on tap for you this morning and invite you to join in the conversation or just sit back and listen as the mystery of what happened to Holly Bobo continues to develop. As we know, the big case out of Decatur County scheduled to go to trial sometime, probably next year, but 2 suspects already in custody, as you know. And the big development over the weekend, the discovery of a skull in Decatur County, all right? And right now, you hear about remains being found. Everyone immediately thinks, oh my goodness, could this be Holly Bobo? No one knows at this point. The skull's been sent off for forensic DNA testing to see if there's a match there. We don't know if it's Holly Bobo at this point, but some human remains, specifically a skull, have been found yesterday, as a matter of fact. We were the ones that broke the story. We'll continue following it today, but there are a lot of elements here that come into play. What does it mean if it is her? What are the chances of this skull possibly being Holly Bobo's remains? We're going to get into all of that. Take some of your phone calls as well at 737-7587 with our legal analyst here, News Channel 5's Nick Leonardo. Thank you, Nick, for rescheduling your morning affairs to come on such short notice, because this just really broke yesterday.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. No problem.
Thank you for coming on. And yeah, when I called Nick yesterday and I said, look, we're getting indications that they have found some human remains. At this point, we don't know if it's anything beyond just a skull and nothing else. And you're, Nick, someone who has some familiarity with this area, right? Going back, sure. You spent time there, did you not, in the past, in the Decatur County area?
Quite a bit of time, actually, Nick.
Okay, you know a lot of people there, and really, when I first mentioned this to you, your first question, was like, okay, well, where did they find this? How far was it? What are the details on all this? Right now, it's way too quick, obviously, to say, oh, this is Holly Bobo's skull.
Absolutely. We don't need to jump to conclusions just yet. I mean, I think that they could have, depending on how much of the skull was there, what kind of condition it was in, they should have been able to tell potentially the sex and the approximate age.
Right off the bat, looking at the skull. You can tell a male skull from a female skull.
But, I also think it's important to point out at the beginning of the show that, I just feel my heart goes out to the Bobo family when they, hear news like this, because at this point in time, I mean, we don't know if Holly Bobo is even dead at this point in time. So I know this is, difficult for them, and I know I just can't imagine the up and down roller coaster the victim's family must have to go through on a daily basis,
I'm glad you said that. Our sympathies to the Bobo family as this develops. What we want to do is give you a look at the location of where this search is going on right now, where the skull was found. A piece filed by Chris Conti yesterday at 10 o'clock. We want to revisit that to give you some background, and both of us can take a closer look at this story. So let's play that for you now, and then we'll come back and continue discussing this most recent development in a very big case.
This is the area where officials were focusing the entirety of their attention today. It is a remote wooded area just off I-40 and Holiday. And although things are quieter out here tonight, it was a much busier scene earlier today as searchers were looking for any evidence that might help them determine who this is.
It's a heavily wooded area.
A few flashing lights on the side of a dirt road may mark the spot where a 3-year-long search comes to a close.
Everybody wants to think that it's linked to the Holly Bobo case, and we don't have any information to confirm or deny that.
Outside the Decatur County Detention Center today, Sheriff Keith Bird explained exactly what happened.
It was 2 hunters that live in Benton County. They found a human skull.
Those hunters were combing through the woods off County Corner Road when they found that skull.
It was just laying out on top of the ground. The guys that found it were digging ginseng. Ginseng is a herb that grows in the woods.
Even from Sky 5, it was hard to see the half-acre-wide crime scene. Having nothing more than a skull to work off of, investigators did their best this afternoon to determine who this is.
What we did today was look for obvious things. Other bones and things like that.
There are 2 missing people in Decatur County, according to the sheriff, but only one disappearance has gotten as much attention as Holly Bobo's.
We can't confirm that it's Holly or it isn't, and the lab will be able to confirm that.
Today's search was less than 6 miles away from the house of the man accused of killing and kidnapping the 19-year-old. Only DNA evidence, though, will determine who this is.
If it is Holly, it'll bring some closure to the family. But right now, it's any speculation would be wild speculation.
And so with the possibility that it very well could be someone else, a 3.5 years long wait still isn't over.
Right now, we don't have any indication as to who this is.
As the sun comes up tomorrow, officials will be back out here to continue their investigation. If this is in fact Holly Bobo, it would provide some type of closure for a case filled with years of uncertainty. In Holiday tonight, Chris Conti, News Channel 5 HD.
All right, that, of course, Chris last night, and he'll be back up there today as they continue looking in that area. It sounds to me, Nick, that the sheriff indicated a skull just there. Nothing else.
Right.
I don't think they found any other bone fragments, any clothing, any jewelry, perhaps. Just a skull. Are you familiar with the area there? Well,
and it appears, though, that's exactly, in close proximity to the interstate.
Really close to the interstate, which is, if you drive from the interstate to Zach Adams' home, it's about 6 miles. It's 6 miles down, and I mean, along the interstate, and even the sheriff at one point, in some other sound I heard from him, talked about, look, it could be Holly, it could be a hitchhiker or a vagrant who had been walking along the interstate that, whatever. Or, as you said, if it's just a skull, someone could have just thrown it
out the window.
Go out the window.
I mean, the question, in a lot of those situations, forensically is, is that just laying on top of some ground there? Was there some sort of erosion? Does it look like it may have been sitting there for a while? I mean, and I get the impression from the sheriff, for whatever reason, that maybe that it seemed like it was fresh, or it was actually just sitting there and it wasn't buried or anything like that.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting, and of course, then you have to, look at the criminal profiles of the people that are accused as well to determine, do you believe that they would actually, take a skull, 6 miles from their house? Would they take it much further? Would they bury her? Would they dismember her if they were the ones who did that?
Right.
I can't imagine they would just take, something like that and just sit it out 6 miles from their house. It seems like they've gone to great lengths to secrete their activities, the alleged activities.
And where's the rest of the remains is the other question on all this. Now, you do know sometimes when bodies are dumped or buried, you can't rule out the possibility that animals, maybe drag something out or whatever, if that's the case. But if this was just, like I said, my gut level, and you and I have both followed this story very closely, is that it's not going to be Holly. It's just based on some of what we've heard here. If it is, it's going to be a huge development in the case, especially, well, for both the prosecution and the defense. Is it a bigger deal for the prosecution or the defense, the fact that the skull?
Well, it's a big deal for both of them, actually. Okay. I mean, for the prosecution's perspective, they haven't come up with anything yet. They've arrested a bunch of people. They haven't, they've been tight-lipped about it. I'm not so sure that the lawyers that are involved have actually received discovery. I know it's out there, or the evidence the state has against these criminally accused individuals. But if they were to find this skull, it would be huge for them, because it would get, through the first prong of this and prove that, Holly Bobo is, she's no longer alive. And it's the same for the defense too. Right now, the defense team's going to say, look, we don't even know that she's dead. I mean, like, again, look at the Ariel Castro case up there. Those girls were missing for 10 years in Cleveland. Everybody, had thought that they were dead, and then, we find out that they are not, thankfully. And so I think it's a huge piece of evidence for both sides. But I think it hurts the defense team if that's Holly Bobo's remains, or part of her remains, and that's 6 miles from the Adams complex there. That stings a little bit, but by no means does it mean that any of those folks did it. But again, it's another piece of circumstantial evidence that they can look at that's pretty harming. Yeah,
you think about Jason Autry and Zach Adams are the two suspects. If they do find the remains, it's not as though there's going to be their business cards. I don't know if they had business cards, something right there next to the skull. I mean, finding the remains does not mean it's instantly implicating these two individuals. But the key there, and we'll talk more about this when we come back from the break, is that you will not have the defense being able to go before the jury and say, wait a second, my client's charged with murder. We don't even know if she's dead. Now, if they have a skull, they can say, well, that's no longer an argument for them.
Well, and I think it's a little more, I think it would make it more interesting if it was found further down Highway 49 towards Parsons instead of right by I-40. Yeah. That just leaves so many other people to potentially have had their hand in that. But thanks to DNA, we're going to find out the answer to this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, right. All right, we'll take a break on that note. The number 737-7587. I know a lot of you have been following the Bobo case. Holly Bobo, Trial date's not even necessarily been set yet at this point, and as Nick said, the discovery, I actually did talk to the attorney for Jason Autry yesterday, Fletcher Long. We'll have some details on what he told me in reaction to this news that I told him yesterday when we got wind of it. We'll discuss more what this all means, the big picture on the Bobo case, and if you want to jump in on this, what do you think? I mean, is this a break in the case? The number 737-7587. The lines are open. We'll be back with more right after this.